With an 11-hour flying display featuring many of Europe's top military performers and a comprehensive showcase of Polish Air Force equipment, the Radom Airshow returned in 2023 for the first time in 5 years. Hello, welcome to another episode of Airshow Dispatches after a bit of a break, but we are back in Radom, Poland for one of the biggest European air shows of the season, and this is one that I have wanted to attend for a very long time indeed. Of course, as usual for Radom, it is a gathering of the top fast jet solo displays from around Europe, but the real reason we're here in this of all years is to see aircraft like the one behind me, the Su-22 and the MiG-29 on the cusp of retirement from the Polish Air Force, and this is one of the very last public opportunities to see them in the air. Let's take a look at the lineup and running order. We start with an air parade by more than 60 aircraft from the Polish Armed Forces, followed by a simulated airfield attack by 2 Su-22s, a MiG-29 and an FA-50. Other highlights coming up: Greek F-16 and Czech Gripen. In half an hour, some brand new solo displays from the Polish Air Force, then the Danish F-16, and the outstanding Finnish Hornet is 39 minutes in. The RAF Typhoon is here, then the Patrouille Suisse are at the 1 hour mark, the phenomenal Belgian F-16 is shortly afterwards. And finally into our night displays, mainly civilian acts, but also some very special performances from the Polish Air Force. But we'll start with the air parade, featuring a total of 64 aircraft from the Polish Armed Forces. First to fly through are their rotary assets, and featured here a pair of Cabri G2s and Robinson R44s, which both serve in the helicopter training role. Now, for examples of the Polish Air Force's primary liaison aircraft, the Mil-2 Czajnik, next, a quartet of PZL W3 Sokols, the first helicopter type to be entirely designed and built in Poland. A trio of Mil-8s, the lead aircraft carrying unguided rocket pods on its outrigger pylons. Now a very interesting mixed formation in the lead, the Polish Navy W3 Anaconda search and rescue aircraft, and also from the Polish Navy a Mi-14 anti-submarine warfare aircraft. We'll see the helicopter due to replace the Mi-14 in Polish service later on in the programme. At the rear of the formation is one of the Polish Army's new S-70I Black Hawks, and on the far side a Polish Army Mi-17. Now it's the turn of the rotary element of the VIP transport fleet. Mi-8T leads a pair of W3P Sokols. Fixed-wing trainers next, 3 of Poland's 4 DA-40 NGs and 3 of their 4 DA-42 NGs. Then 6 PZL-130 TC2 Orlik basic jet trainers. We'll see these aircraft again later as part of Aerobatic Team Orlik. Transport aircraft now, and here are 4 M28B Breezers. This is the most numerous transport aircraft in Polish service. Here, one of their 5 C-130Es leads in 3 out of Poland's 16 C295Ms. Back to VIP transport, and this is one of Poland's 2 Gulfstream G550s, escorted by a pair of M346s. Followed by one of their 3 737-800 Boeing business jets, escorted by a pair of F-16Cs. And we round things out with the jets, 4 of Poland's 16 M346 Belgian advanced jet trainers. Then a trio of Su-22 M4s. Around 18 Su-22s remain in service, although they are no longer fully operational. The type is awaiting its imminent retirement, probably sometime in 2024. Also on the cusp of retirement, the MiG-29. Poland has 28 of them, but a good number have now been donated to Ukraine, with the rest awaiting retirement probably next year. Here's the backbone of the Polish fighter fleet, the F-16 Jastrzęb. The Air Force has 48 of those. And now a MiG-29 flies with its successor, the FA-50 Fighting Eagle. The first 2 FA-50s were delivered earlier this summer in so-called gap filler configuration. A total of 48 have been ordered, and by the end of the decade, the whole fleet will be fitted out to the more advanced FA-50 PL Block 20 standard. Not technically part of the air parade, but flying through shortly afterwards, a group of PZL M18B Dromadas. That's a Polish-designed agricultural and firefighting aircraft dating back to the mid-1970s, but still in production today. Some of the assets from the air parade will now return to us for Radom's traditional airfield attack scenario. It's probably fair to say this isn't the greatest piece of aerial theatre we've ever seen, just a couple of straight and level passes from each aircraft, but nonetheless a very welcome chance to see more Su-22 and MiG-29 action. This is a time of great change for the Polish Air Force, with the rapid replacement of its Soviet-era equipment with much more modern Western aircraft. Not long ago, the MiG-29 and Su-22 were the backbone of Poland's combat fleet. The Mi-24 was the primary battlefield helicopter and the TS-11 provided advanced jet training. Now all of those types have either gone or are awaiting imminent retirement and will instead be looking at types like the Apache and the F-35. Plus, of course, the selection of the FA-50 is hugely significant. It's the first time since the Second World War that a European nation has operated a fixed-wing combat aircraft designed and built in Asia. While the first two FA-50s have now been delivered to Poland, it seems pilot training is not yet complete, because the FA-50 in the flying display was flown by a Korean pilot with his Polish counterpart riding in the back seat. That was quite possibly the final ever appearance of a Polish MiG-29 in a European flying display. We'll have more action from the Polish Air Force later. In the meantime, we'll take a quick-fire run-through of the morning warbird segment, which featured a variety of Polish-based historic piston-powered aircraft. Here, an RWD-5 sports touring and training aircraft of 1931, and now a very rare RWD-8.
Oh, God, don't...
This is one of the most produced Polish aircraft in history, developed in the early 1930s as a civilian touring aircraft and a military trainer. More than 600 were built, but none of the originals survive. This replica was built between 2020 and 2021, and while it looks externally like a faithful representation, it's actually a far more modern aircraft. It has a metal fuselage rather than being fabric covered, it has a newer engine, modern radios, and a steerable tailwheel rather than a skid. A far more common sight at air shows, we also enjoyed appearances by a Chipmunk, Grasshopper and Harvard Mark IV. Flying just after the main warbird slot was this pair of TS-11 Iskras from Biało-Czerwone Skrzydła, which translates as the Red-White Wings Foundation. Iskra was, until recently, the Polish Air Force's advanced jet training aircraft and the mount of their defunct national aerobatic team Biało-Czerwone Iskry, which was disbanded just over a year ago. This foundation currently owns 2 airworthy Iskras, with one more being in the final stages of restoration to flight. They are also in line to receive several more Iskras previously flown by the National Aerobatic Team in its final months of operation. As the Iskras brake left and right, that heralds the start of our first fastjet solo display of the day, which is from the Hellenic Air Force. It's Demo Team Zeus. Demo Team Zeus is the primary Hellenic Air Force display team. It made its debut in 2010, having first received training from the US Air Force West Coast Viper demo team, and the American influence on the display profile is clear to see. The Hellenic Air Force has one of the largest and most interesting assortments of combat aircraft in Europe. They have about 150 F-16Cs and Ds, plus 33 F-4E Phantoms, which have been much upgraded, a small number of Mirage 2005 Mark IIs, plus their latest acquisition, the Dassault Rafale, of which the first examples were delivered in 2022. Greece is also pursuing the F-35A Lightning as another possible procurement. A large portion of the Greek F-16 fleet is currently undergoing upgrades to F-16V Viper standard. Deliveries of those upgraded aircraft began last year and will be complete by 2027, allowing the Phantom fleet to be wound down and retired. Zeus was the first official F-16 display team in the world to use an aircraft fitted with conformal fuel tanks. These hold an extra 450 gallons of fuel, 50% more than a traditional centerline tank, while adding less weight and more than 80% less drag. Although primarily a military show, there was quite a large number of light civilian performers at the Radom Airshow 2023. Here is Luke Cepiela in his Edge 540, racing a Formula 1 car driven by Ben Collins, formerly known as the Stig. We'll see more from Luke later on. He's increasingly being adopted into the Flying Bulls family and will fly in formation with two of their Alpha jets later in the programme. Now, I have long argued that Poland has one of the most interesting airshow industries in the world, but one thing they don't have an abundance of is Second World War fighters. There was just one such aircraft in the 2023 lineup, British pilot and Romanian resident Steve Stead displaying his Belgian-based P-51D Mustang, known as Little Rebel. We'll get back to the modern military in just a moment, but first, a quick glance at another of those light civilian participants, the 383 formation team.
Możemy stracić troszeczkę poczucie skali, ale kiedy podejdą Państwo do niego na wystawie statycznej, gwarantuję, że poczują Państwo właśnie skalę.
They fly 3 examples of this Polish-designed all-metal sports and utility ultralight, which made its first flight in 1997.
Oczywiście żartuję, te dwupłatowce powstały z innego powodu. A teraz, drodzy Państwo, piękne rozpuszczanie formacji 3 samolotów AT.
But now taking centre stage, Captain Andrzej Spanko of the Czech Air Force's 212th Tactical Squadron and the Saab Jas-39C Gripen. This is an aircraft designed to meet Sweden's unique military doctrine of dispersed operations. That calls for a low-cost aircraft that can be operated in large numbers with excellent short takeoff and landing capability, minimal maintenance requirements and very rapid mission turnaround times. The Gripen certainly met all of those criteria. Sweden regularly operates the type from highway strips, where after landing it can be refueled, rearmed and readied for the next mission in just 20 minutes. Its operating costs too are impressive. The Gripen's cost per flight hour is estimated by Janes to be 30% lower than the F-16 and 85% lower than the F-35B. The Czech Republic selected the Gripen to replace its ageing MiG-29s after it joined NATO, but it decided not to buy them outright. Instead, the Czech Air Force leased 14 second-hand jets from Saab in 2004, with that lease currently due to expire in 2027. A further lease extension is likely, meaning the Czech Republic will continue operating the Gripen C until around 2029, at which point it will likely be replaced by either the F-35 or by the next generation Gripen E. An 8-point hesitation roll there, and now the aircraft sets up on the right 45-degree line, initially for a loop. Extending that vertical upline ever so slightly so the Gripen completes the loop with more altitude than it started it. That will allow Captain Spanko to perform a very photogenic on-crowd loaded roll. In addition to the Gripen, the Czech Air Force also contributed their very energetic W3A Sokol solo display. Sokol was designed by Piezadel Svidnik and made its first flight in 1979. The Czech Air Force got their 11 Sokols in 1996 in exchange for 10 MiG-29s. This example comes from the 243rd Helicopter Squadron, which operates 10 of the 11 Sokols in Czech service. 6 are configured for rescue missions and 4 for light transport. Around 150 Sokols have been built in total in various versions, They fly with the militaries of Algeria, Poland, the Czech Republic, the Philippines and Myanmar, as well as with other government services such as the police force and fire department in countries such as the Republic of Korea, Germany, Chile and Uganda. The Polish Air Force provided several solar displays at the Radom Airshow this year, including some that we haven't seen before. Among them, the M346 Belgian performing a full aerobatic routine for the very first time. Poland's first Belgians were delivered in 2016 and the final one arrived in 2022, replacing the TS-11 Iskra. Poland is the second largest export customer of the M346. The others are Israel, Greece, Qatar and Singapore. The arrival of the M346 has been a major step change for the Polish Air Force because, unlike the TS-11, this aircraft is certified to train pilots for 4th and 5th generation fighters. That means all Polish Air Force fighter pilots can now be trained domestically rather than being sent overseas to train with other air arms. Another aircraft that we don't very often see performing a full airshow sequence is the C295M, this one coming from the 8th Transport Aviation Base in Krakow. The C295M is a derivative of a joint Spanish-Indonesian civilian airliner and tactical airlifter, the CN235. This is a more advanced development, with a 3-metre stretched fuselage, and it's been designed as a purely military product, produced initially by the Spanish company CASA, but now part of the Airbus family. In its basic cargo configuration, as we see here, the C295M can carry 71 troops, 24 stretchers, or 5 standard cargo pallets. It can also conduct airdrops and is capable of operating from austere runways. Specialised versions of the C295M are also available, fitted out for roles such as ISR, signals intelligence and maritime patrol. Now a demonstration of the power provided by those two Pratt & Whitney Canada PW127G turboprop engines, producing a combined 5,800 shaft horsepower with this steep climb and wing over. Another very high quality solo display came from the SW4 Puszczyk, which performed a solo routine that was developed especially for the airshow at Radom this year. The SW4 was developed by PZL Swidnik, and its design originates in the 1960s. Development work began in earnest about 20 years later. Further design changes were made after the collapse of the Soviet Union, which allowed the manufacturer to incorporate more modern Western components, and the type finally made its first flight in 1996. Only about 45 of these helicopters were produced, and I say about 45 because the type is also being built under licence in China, where the numbers are hard to find. 28 of those 45 or so aircraft fly for the Polish Air Force in the rotary training role. Our final Polish Air Force display for now comes from an M28B Brisa. The Brisa is a Polish development of the Antonov An-28, a light airliner developed in the early 1980s. The M28 is built in Poland by PZL Milik and made its first flight in 1993, the same year that the An-28 went out of production. Unlike the original Antonov, the M28 has many Western parts, although the variants used by the Polish military have been fitted with Polish PZL 10S engines rather than the American PT-6A fitted to other M28 variants. Following on from the M28 is our second F-16 display of the day. This time it comes from the Royal Danish Air Force. What a fantastic paint scheme this is. This aircraft was painted up in 2021 to mark the 800th anniversary of the Dannebrog, the Danish national flag. Denmark was one of the original 4 European partner nations of the F-16 programme. The others were Belgium, the Netherlands and Norway. Denmark originally ordered 77 F-16s, which were licence-built by Sabca in Belgium. They have been upgraded to F-16AM MLU specification, which includes the Link 16 data link, helmet sight, targeting pods, new computers and the ability to use the AIM-9X Sidewinder, providing a full multi-role capability. The Danish F-16 fleet is now due to be retired ahead of schedule in about 2025, replaced by 27 F-35A Lightnings. The first of those F-35s arrived in country in just the last few weeks. It is expected that some of those retiring F-16s will then be handed to the armed forces of Ukraine. It's a very aggressive sequence. When the pilot pulls back on the stick, he really pulls back all the way. It's very much in evidence during this high G turn. Seconds to complete that 360-degree turn. That's a good 6 or 7 seconds quicker than we usually see from the likes of the Typhoon, Super Hornet, F-35 or F-22. A duo of classic jets now, 2 MiG-15s. In the lead is an SB Lim 2 two-seat trainer, equivalent to the MiG-15 UTI. It was originally built in Russia as a single-seater, but modified into a two-seat trainer here in Poland. Flying in the number 2 position, a Polish-built Lim 2B, equivalent to the MiG-15 BIS. It's currently the only airworthy single-seat MiG-15 in Europe, and it made its post-restoration flight in 2021. The two jets are operated by the Squadron Foundation, who offer joy flights and stag weekends from their base at Warsaw Modlin Airport. They also have plans to restore a MiG-17 and MiG-21 to airworthy condition. Both aircraft could be complete in just 2 or 3 years if everything goes well. Those two MiG-15s mark the start of another civilian interlude, and here we see Polish airshow legend Artur Kilak flying his new Gamebird GB1. The Gamebird is the latest unlimited aerobatic aircraft to be designed by Philipp Steinbach as the successor to his Extreme Air XA-41 and XA-42. The aircraft has exceptional aerobatic performance and plenty of power thanks to its 300 horsepower Lycoming AEIO 580 engine and 4-bladed MT propeller, but it's been built in relatively modest numbers so far. Artur Kilak is one of the first pilots to display the type on the European airshow circuit. Another stalwart of Polish airshows in recent years is the Selfast flying team, flying a quartet of Marine Saulnier 893s.
W przypadku tych samolotów jest to bardzo proste, dlatego że z ziemi wyglądają one tak samo. Natomiast samolot lidera ma silnik inny niż pozostałej trójki.
Here's quite an interesting manoeuvre, the lead aircraft pitching up to leave the formation and performing a low-speed high-alpha pass while his counterparts fly a 360-degree turn underneath it. As the aircraft exit that 360-degree turn, the leader will push nose down and neatly rejoin the formation. The team was formed 7 years ago and is now quite a substantial operation, with 5 identical aircraft, as well as their own hangar, bar and hotel at their base in Krosno.
Po to, by zaprezentować taki program jak ten, który widzą Państwo teraz, a który prowadzony jest w bardzo spokojnym powietrzu. I piękne rozejście.
Now, one of the absolute stars of the Radom Airshow 2023, Captain Henry Topari in the Finnish Air Force's FA-18C Hornet. That abrupt pull is a taste of what is to come, because this is no ordinary Hornet. Unlike the standard legacy Hornets operated by the United States, Finland's FA-18s have been structurally reinforced. That means the maximum load factor has been increased from 7.5G to 9G. Finland selected the Hornet in the early 1990s to replace the Saab Draken and MiG-21, with the first aircraft being delivered in 1995. They have been regularly upgraded ever since then, receiving substantial standoff air-to-ground capability in 2012. Despite that, they will soon be due for replacement. The F-35 has been selected as their successor, and the Finnish Hornet fleet will begin winding down at the end of the decade. Another very impressive high alpha manoeuvre coming up, with a vertical climb, then an abrupt pull over the top, and now a pirouette. This is something that the flight control software will initiate automatically if the aircraft exceeds 25 degrees angle of attack at low speed, and the pilot then applies full stick and pedal in the same direction. By meeting those parameters, the pilot has effectively told the computer he wants to fly a pirouette, and the computer will then move the control surfaces such as to achieve that. And now a manoeuvre called the hat. The aircraft will roll onto the A-axis and pitch to 90 degrees nose up, and then push down into level flight. Incredibly, this whole manoeuvre will use less than 1,000 feet of vertical space. This high alpha capability is enabled by the Hornet's pronounced leading edge route extensions, or strakes. They create vortices over the wings that allow the wing to continue producing lift long after it would otherwise have stalled. We've seen quite a number of current Polish Armed Forces assets over the course of the programme, but here a look to the future, with 3 helicopters from AgustaWestland performing a formation hover and then consecutive solo displays. First to fly a solo display is the AW109, which, as far as I can tell, is the only one out of these 3 types that doesn't have a future role with the Polish military. This design dates back to 1971, but countless upgraded variants have since been produced for a variety of military and civilian roles. The design also has strong Polish links because since the mid-1990s, hundreds of AW109 fuselages have been built in Poland by PZL Świdnik. This AW149, although displayed by a British crew from Augusta Westland, wears Polish roundels, and that's because the aircraft is shortly to enter service with the Polish Army. Poland ordered 32 AW149s last year, most of which will be built locally by PZL Świdnik, and deliveries will take place between 2023 and 2029. The AW149's primary role in Polish service will be troop transport, but it will also be used for medical evacuation, combat search and rescue, and resupply missions. Accordingly, the aircraft will be equipped with unguided rockets and guided missiles, including the Hellfire, as well as observation and self-defense systems. Also displayed by a British crew but wearing Polish markings is this AW101, which is soon to replace the Mi-14 in the anti-submarine warfare role with the Polish Navy. This aircraft was delivered to Poland for testing just a few weeks before the airshow at Radom, and is the first of 4 AW101s that will eventually operate in Polish service. Notable for the maritime environment, the AW101 has 3 Rolls-Royce Turbomeca RTM 322 engines powering its main rotor, producing a combined 6,300 shaft horsepower. This not only gives the AW101 incredible safety redundancy, but also allows it to lift substantial payloads, 3 tons internally or 5.5 tons underslung. In addition to the 4 AW101s already ordered for the Polish Navy, the Polish government is also negotiating the possible purchase of 22 more, which would be destined for the Polish land forces. Here's another Polish Navy helicopter, albeit this is an airframe that's been in active service for many years, the W3 Anaconda. This is one of 8 Anacondas operated by the Polish Navy, a modernised, navalised version of the Sokol, used primarily for search and rescue. The aircraft were built between 1991 and 2002, but have recently undergone a major upgrade programme. Maritime-specific equipment includes AIS vessel identification, emergency radio detection, weather radar, the thermal imaging camera and a searchlight. The first of our 2 national aerobatic teams now, it's Aerobatic Team Orlik. Following the demise of Biało-Czerwone Iskry last year, Aerobatic Team Orlik is now the Polish Air Force's only multi-aircraft display team. It's a part-time team comprising of flight instructors, drawing aircraft from the regular Orlik fleet. The team was founded in 1998 and has displayed with as many as 9 aircraft at points in its history, but the last 5 years have been pretty challenging for the team. Fleet-wide upgrades to the Orlik forced them to drop to just a solo display in 2018, and they've never quite recovered from that. They were supposed to fly as a 7-ship team in 2023, their largest formation since 2017, but a minor accident earlier in the season again saw them cut back to just a solo display for much of this year. The Radom Airshow marked their return to formation displays, now flying as a 6-ship.
The
PZL-130 is a basic jet training aircraft which entered service in 1994. It's used exclusively by the Polish Armed Forces, and depending on which database you refer to, between 20 and 30 of them remain in active service. Adding to the team's problems this year is the fact that a very high proportion of their pilots are fairly new to airshows, so this sequence isn't quite as polished as it was in the past. The display is aided by the use of Sander's SCSG-5A smoke pods under the fuselage. These systems are favoured by aerobatic teams like Team Orlik, which borrow standard operational aircraft. That's because, unlike exhaust smoke used by the likes of the Red Arrows and the Blue Angels, these smoke pods are entirely self-contained and can be fitted to any NATO standard 14-inch hardpoint without requiring any modifications to the aircraft. Another very famous aerobatic team, but this time from the civilian world, it's Żelazny. Żelazny are very well known for their low formation flying and their imaginative manoeuvres, filling the sky with unusual smoke patterns. We've enjoyed seeing them at the Radom Airshow many times. I recommend our episode from Leszno 2021 if you want to see more of what this team can do. But like so many performers here at Radom, they were just higher and further away here than at most other venues. So we'll just pay a quick look at them to break up the military heavy metal, but if you do want to see more, then seek out that episode from Leszno 2021 that I mentioned a moment ago.
Jeszcze raz do tak zwanej ósemki kubańskiej, w tej chwili pętla.
Obserwując to, jak wolno rozpadają się ślady zostawione przez dym z samolotów, można określić to, jak słaby i spokojny jest wiatr. Warunki są idealne do wykonywania tego typu pokazów.
More from Żelazny later as part of the night show, but now it's over to Flight Lieutenant Matt Brighty of 29 Squadron Royal Air Force and the Typhoon FGR-4. A glimpse there at the Typhoon's exceptional climb performance. No low transition like we typically see from the F-22 or F-35. The Typhoon's going straight from rotation into a vertical climb, powered by those two Eurojet EJ200s, producing over 40,000 pounds of thrust. I was speaking recently to one of the original Eurofighter test pilots, and he was telling me that the Typhoon has so much power that it can outperform almost any other fighter in the vertical. In fact, in his opinion, the Typhoon is the nicest handling fighter available today. slightly less carefree in roll though. The roll rate is perfectly good, but rolling a Typhoon does entail quite a lot of attitude loss, more than 5 degrees for every complete roll. We'll shortly see the Typhoon performing a 420-degree derry turn, but unlike the F-16 and Gripen we saw earlier, Brighty can't just whack the stick over to the left, he has to complete a setup manoeuvre first, pitching the nose up by 5 to 7 degrees. This specific aircraft is a Typhoon Tranche 1, the oldest tranche of Typhoons in the Royal Air Force. Those Tranche 1 jets serve exclusively as air defence fighters. They can be armed only with short and medium range air-to-air missiles, and they have no air-to-ground or reconnaissance capability. Due to the ageing avionics architecture, they are very difficult to upgrade, and costly structural modifications to the forward bulkhead would be required in order to incorporate the active electronically scanned array radar such as the rest of the Typhoon fleet is shortly due to receive. Because of that, the UK government has decided to retire the Tranche 1 Typhoon fleet by 2025, with around half of their fatigue lives remaining on average. Fuel venting from the transfer line at the tip of the tail there. That transfer line enables air to escape from the fuel tanks during aerial refuelling, but it also lets fuel leak out during negative G flight. It's a really very good display from the Typhoon this year, but it blows a little hot and cold depending on the venue. Certainly it felt a lot less intimate at Radom than at, say, Cosford or Riyadh earlier in the season. But still, a strong showing from the RAF and a display that was, I know, very keenly anticipated by Polish airshow enthusiasts. We've already seen an M28 in the programme. In that case, it was an M28B Brisa demonstrated by the Polish Air Force. Well, here is an M28 Model 5 demonstrated by its manufacturer PZL Mielik. The Model 5 has better stall performance and a higher gross weight than its predecessors. It's available in various configurations: passenger, cargo, combi, parachuting, VIP transport and medical evacuation. The Polish border guards also use a version of the Model 5 for maritime patrol duties, fitted with AIS vessel identification, a FLIR camera, ISAR radar and rescue equipment. Now a demonstration of the aforementioned stall capabilities, with a very steep approach and a short landing roll. Traditionally, the Radom Airshow has boasted a huge number of large jet aerobatic teams, 5 at each of the last 2 editions of the show. not all of those teams exist anymore, and this year, perhaps reflecting the decline of the airshow industry generally, there was just one. But it was a very good one, the Patrouille Suisse. The Patrouille Suisse was founded in 1964 to mark the 50th anniversary of the Swiss Air Force. At that point they flew the Hawker Hunter, but in 1994 they transitioned to the F-5. Now, Tiger 6, the soloist, approaches from the right. The main formation is to our left. This is the tunnel. Nowadays, the Swiss Air Force's F-5 fleet is being wound down. They mainly fly in the aggressor role nowadays, and just 18 or so remain in service. They're all due to be gone by around 2026, meaning that we are very likely near the end of the road for the Patrouille Suisse team. A total of 12 F-5s are maintained in Patrouille Suisse colours. This isn't a full-time team though, so all of those aircraft are used for regular military operations when not flying with the team. Given those mission profiles mainly revolve around training, as I mentioned earlier, that high visibility colour scheme is actually quite useful. A good look at the F-5's exceptional roll rate there, demonstrating about 200 degrees per second during that manoeuvre. The F-5 Freedom Fighter was designed in the late 1950s as a low-cost, easy-to-maintain fighter, but it spawned a family tree of other aircraft which have been operated globally. There was, of course, the more advanced F-5 Tiger II, which we see here. There was the sadly failed F-20 Tiger Shark project. The T-38 Talon is closely based on the F-5. Several Iranian so-called fourth-generation fighter designs are in fact crudely modified F-5s, and even the FA-18 Hornet can trace its roots back to the Freedom Fighter. Now in come the soloists for opposition derry turns. The Patrouille Suisse is one of the only Western aerobatic teams to use supersonic afterburning aircraft. The others are the Thunderbirds and Blue Angels, of course. But that does mean the character of the Patrouille Suisse display is very different to what we're used to seeing in Europe. The most notable difference is surely the higher speed combined with a larger turn radius. The F-5's turn performance is not especially good, even by the standard of other fighters. that does mean that, especially during these formation sequences, the aircraft travel a very long way away from the crowd and are quite difficult to see at times. Although frankly, when their jets look this pretty, that's a shortcoming that I'm willing to accept. Good to see such liberal use of flares by the Patrouille Suisse at Radom. They weren't used when we saw the team earlier this year at Cosford, because on that occasion the team was basing from RAF Shawbury, which doesn't have a suitable area to store live ordnance. Final pass from the soloist, and look out for the bird strike. Two to the fuselage and two to the engine, but the aircraft was nonetheless able to land safely, and here comes the rest of the team for the finale grande.
Thank you and see you soon. Bye-bye, guys.
A change of pace courtesy of Aerosparks next, and although we've featured this team on airshow dispatches many times before, this show is a little different because the team has been working on some interesting changes to their display over the past few weeks. First of all, the solo displays flown by Rob Barsby and Guy Westgate are now flown simultaneously rather than consecutively, which fills the sky very nicely indeed. And secondly, the close formation orbits at the end of the show have been replaced by this spiralling manoeuvre, in this case featuring red and white smoke to mirror the Polish national flag. And that will be followed by one of the most interesting, one of the most original fast-jet solo displays on the airshow circuit globally. Captain Steven de Vries of the Belgian Air Components F-16AM Fighting Falcon solo display. That opening manoeuvre gives an indication of what is to come. Manoeuvres the likes of which we have never seen from an F-16 before. This aircraft is known as the Dream Viper, and the display mimics the shapes and movements of its namesake. Vries is in his second season as Belgium's F-16 display pilot. He's the fifth most experienced F-16 pilot in the world, and we are running out of superlatives to describe just what he can do with this aeroplane. But there is not long left to enjoy this most extraordinary of displays. Belgium once operated 160 F-16s, now they have somewhere in the region of 50 left, and very soon they will have none at all. 2024 will be the farewell season for this wonderful display team, which has been a stalwart of European airshows for as long as I can remember. Negative G there, peaking at minus 4G and then an abrupt pull into positive G. Those transitions between positive and negative load factors are especially punishing. Belgium's first F-16s were delivered in 1978 and they began their first upgrade programme just 2 years later. A much more substantial upgrade followed in the mid-1990s, which effectively elevated these F-16As to F-16C standards. Another snake-inspired manoeuvre, and more negative G. Now, a low-speed, high-alpha pass, but with a difference. Not a gradual deceleration, as we normally see, but an abrupt snap into high-alpha level flight. Like most other European F-16A operators, Belgium has elected to replace their Fighting Falcons with F-35As. They've ordered 32 airframes, with the first due to be delivered at the end of this year, although the Belgian Air Force is currently dissatisfied with a software change to the aircraft, which has yet to be approved, so that delivery schedule is likely to be delayed by around 6 months. As the sun begins to set, it is the turn of the Flying Bulls to entertain us. With 4 aircraft from their collection, Luke Japiela in the Edge 540 that we saw earlier, Felix Baumgartner in the Bol 105, and a pair of Alpha Jet A's. A typically exciting demonstration of this pioneering helicopter with its rigid hingeless rotor system, in which the blades are bolted directly into a solid titanium block on the rotor head. The blades themselves are composite material reinforced by glass fibre, making them extremely strong and flexible, and that flexibility allows them to absorb forces that would normally be taken by the hinges. Red Bull has got quite the cast of characters in its team nowadays. Felix Baumgartner is the man who at one point held the record for the highest ever skydive jump, which he claimed in 2012 by jumping from 119,000 feet.
Wyrysowany taki kociąg. Ja zawsze widząc taką figurę i tą smugę, która zostaje, dostrzegam w tym pewną sugestię na wieczór.
Jeśli chodzi o te figury autorotacyjne,
jak to wygląda? Sami Państwo widzicie. Po raz pierwszy zawody...
Flying the Edge 540 meanwhile is Luke Japiela, still fresh from his head-turning bullseye landing on the helipad at the top of the Burj Al Arab. A very good view of a 3/4 snap roll here, pitching up abruptly to stall both wings and then using the rudder to commence auto-rotation. Opposite rudder and a relaxation of that elevator input to arrest the roll after 270 degrees of rotation, and then Luke loads the stick back up to exit to our left.
No a dla nas też jest Łukasz inspiracją, ponieważ jego głowa jest pełna pomysłów. W dodatku ma wokół siebie fantastycznych ludzi, którzy teraz też w niego wierzą. Dzięki temu realizuje tak szalone pomysły jak budowanie na dachu wieżowca w Emiratach Arabskich.
And now the turn of the Alpha Jets with some poetically graceful formation aerobatics.
Samoloty są kilka metrów oddalone od siebie, może nie tak blisko jak tutaj, ale czasami bywa tak. I wtedy już to zjawisko przyciągania jest wyczuwalne.
The Alpha Jet was a joint project between France and Germany. It first flew in 1973 and saw truly global sales success, with nearly 500 aircraft being built, operated by 12 air forces.
Jak duże są te siły, jak bardzo intensywnie musi pracować pilot, jak oni muszą non-stop siebie nawzajem obserwować, z jakim refleksem muszą nawzajem reagować na swoje...
Most of them have since been retired. The German Air Force in particular was a major Alpha Jet A operator but stood down its fleet in the early 1990s, and the Flying Bulls has secured 4 of them.
Albo aby kierownictwa zasiadł za sterami samolotu, no to będzie największe nasze osiągnięcie i satysfakcja.
Nasz pilot jest przede wszystkim omówiony, później przetrenowany tą metodą, o której wspominałem.
These Alpha Jet A's represent the combat version of the Alpha Jet. The training variant is known as the Alpha Jet E. These aircraft were used for the light attack role and could carry 2 Matra rocket pods, bombs, short-range air-to-air missiles such as the AIM-9X Sidewinder or the AGM-65 Maverick air-to-ground missile.
Tutaj ten czas jest troszeczkę krótszy, tutaj skracamy to do, powiedzmy sobie, 5 sekund. Ale proszę Państwa teraz. Alpha Jet będący z tyłu, pilot, który leci...
More classic jet action courtesy of one of the TS-11s that we saw earlier, but now flying with pyrotechnics.
A my kontynuujemy jeszcze dzisiejszy pokaz.
Do tej pory były dymy, a teraz proszę bardzo...
The Foundation began using pyrotechnics in 2019. As far as I know, they are the only fast jet display in the world to fly a night show with fireworks, and the performance has certainly become rather more refined since those early days. We did cover one of those initial pyro shows at Gdynia Aerobaltic in 2019, if you want to go and find the episode of Airshow Dispatches and compare it.
I fajerwerki będą wyglądały spektakularnie. O istrze mówiliśmy już bardzo dużo.
The high speeds of a jet don't necessarily lend themselves very well to pyro. It spreads the trail so thinly that it doesn't have as much visual impact as it would on a slower aircraft, but nonetheless, a very graceful display indeed. Now the last fast jet solo display of the day, the F-16C Jastrob of the Polish Air Force's Tiger demo team, flown by Captain Maciej Krakowian. In the late 1990s, Poland was seeking its first Western fighter aircraft, and a vicious 4-way battle ensued between the F-16, the F-18, the Gripen and the Mirage 2000. The F-16C was chosen as the eventual winner, primarily for tangentially related financial reasons, and the first aircraft arrived in 2006. Poland's F-16 fleet, which comprises 36 F-16Cs and 12 F-16Ds, represented the most advanced F-16s in NATO until the arrival of the first Greek F-16Vs last year. Tiger demo team uses an F-16C for displays, but at Sunday at Radom, they made the unusual step of using an F-16D twin-seater with a dorsal spine. On these twin-seat models, some of the flare dispensers are located in a different and rather unusual position, including one on the top surface of the aircraft, rather than its more traditional position on the underside. There it was, clear as day, flares simultaneously being fired downwards from those conventionally positioned dispensers, but also upwards from the upper surfaces as the aircraft demonstrates the impressive power of its Pratt & Whitney F100 engine, producing 29,000 pounds of thrust and powering the aircraft from that slow pass into a reverse half-Cuban. As it completes this manoeuvre, the aircraft will accelerate from very low speed to very high speed, with a fast pass at Mach 0.94. A second display now by the Żelazny Aerobatic Group, this time showing off their new Pyro Act, which they debuted at Radom Airshow Leszno earlier this year. In the roughly 2 months that have elapsed since then, their act has improved enormously, with much better use of pyro. In Leszno, the team was generally firing just 2 gerbs at a time across the whole formation, whereas at Radom, you can see they're firing 6 at any one time, 1 from each wingtip. We also saw the introduction of some imaginative synchronised aerobatics, much more reminiscent of their day show, this being a prime example, 2 Zlin 50s drawing a circle in the sky, while a third flies through the middle of it. A performance in a similar vein, albeit considerably more aerobatic in nature, came from Marek Choim in his Extra 330 SC.
Aparaty w dłoń to jest ten moment, kiedy należy zacząć robić zdjęcia.
Great use of Roman candles during those rapid aileron rolls. That just looks fantastic. This is one of my favourite solo pyro displays on the circuit, and so I was very sad to hear that 2023 might be Marek's final display season. It's fitting that we mark that occasion with a look at his trademark display finale, a pyro slalom run. A brief interlude by the Polish Air Force now, as Su-22 M4 performed a flypast while dropping illumination charges from its KKR-1 recce pod. These charges are used to illuminate the ground during nighttime reconnaissance sorties. Our next pyro act, oh goodness, there's actually pyro hitting the tailplane there. But as I was saying, our next pyro act is the 2-time World Glider Aerobatic Champion, Maciej Pospieszynski, displaying the S1 Swift. The Swift is a highly aerobatic glass fibre glider produced in Poland and used extensively at the very top tier of glider aerobatic competitions. However, with only 30 of them having been produced, it's a rather highly sought-after commodity. And look at this truly remarkable flying, a half loop while rolling, or I suppose you could say a rolling circle in the vertical plane. I don't think I've ever seen that done before by any aircraft, let alone a glider, let alone at night. Absolutely outstanding. 2023 was the very first time that the Radom Airshow had featured a night show, and in the main, it featured light civilian performers many of which we've already seen at the Anti-Dotum Airshow Leszno in the previous episode of Airshow Dispatches. The Bushcat demo team and the Flying Dragons are prime examples of that, and they can fly rather lower and closer at Leszno than they can at Radom, so we'll just canter through them here. If you want to see more, then do check out that previous episode.
Nie są myśliwce, a mimo to zobaczcie, co potrafią te statki powietrzne i ich piloci, the Flying Dragons.
The same goes too for this fantastic Bo 105 solo display. For those who haven't seen, we have a special dispensation to operate a filming drone at the Anti-Dotum Airshow and to fly it in very close proximity to some of the performing aircraft. That gave us an amazing eye-level view of this Bo 105 with the remnants of a fantastic sunset in the background, so please do go and give that film from Leszno a watch. It's one of our best episodes ever, and it includes some absolutely incredible imagery. Just 2 acts to go now, and we do need to give a little airtime to our friends from Aerosparks with this wonderful new display sequence of theirs. Radom was the first time I'd seen their simultaneous solo displays, and it fills the sky so very well, especially at night. They're flying an aircraft with a notable military career, the Rob 109, which was used from 1991 until 2018 with the Royal Air Force on volunteer gliding squadrons and air experience flights. It was known in RAF service as the Vigilant T1. They were only withdrawn from service due to a paperwork anomaly, and thankfully those ex-RAF aircraft are being fitted with new engines and are starting their new civilian lives. That being said, the original Grob 109 is still perfectly capable. Its 90 horsepower engine gives it a cruise speed of about 100 knots and a range of nearly 100 miles, while its long wings give it very good gliding performance as well. Viewers who did watch our episode from Leszno might recall we saw a fantastic C-130 Hercules solo display capped off by a spectacular flare dump. Sadly, we didn't get the full solo sequence at Radom, but we did get the flare dump, and here it is to round off this episode of Airshow Dispatches.
I to jest najjaśniejszy moment tego pokazu.
Do join us for the next episode from Paris Air Legend in France. It's a warbird show, but the stars are some amazing classic jets and some great military performances as well. Until then, from me, Adam Landau, thank you very much for joining us, and goodbye for now.